When my husband died, I thought my world had ended. But when the lawyer read his will, it wasn't grief that shattered me. It was betrayal. His sister got our company, our mansion, everything we'd built together. And I got a plane ticket to Monaco. Just one. But what I didn't know was that my husband's death wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning of his revenge. A revenge that would make the entire world watch his sister's empire crumble. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever wanted karma to show up and actually deliver, then this story is for you. Hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear is not just revenge, it's justice from beyond the grave. I still remember the weight of that day, the smell of polished oak in the lawyer's office, the sharp scent of Vanessa's perfume, and the suffocating silence before everything fell apart. Charles had been gone only 6 days. The funeral flowers were still fresh when I sat in that cold room, clutching the handkerchief he used to keep in his suit pocket. 20 years of marriage, and I felt like a ghost, invisible in a room full of vultures. Vanessa, his younger sister, sat across from me, legs crossed, her red nails tapping impatiently on the mahogany table. She looked immaculate, like grief was just an accessory she didn't need. When the lawyer, Mr. Dalton, cleared his throat, I felt my heart hammer. "To my beloved wife, Eleanor," he began. My breath caught. "I leave an all-expenses-paid trip to Monaco." There was a pause that felt like a blade. That was it. No company shares, no estate, not even a keepsake. The rest, the company, the mansion, the assets, the vehicles, all went to Vanessa. She didn't even pretend to hide her smile. "Well," she said softly, "Charles always said I had the better head for business." Something inside me broke. I remember standing up, dizzy, my throat burning. "This must be some mistake," I whispered. "Charles would never—" Mr. Dalton avoided my eyes. "I'm afraid this is the will on record, Mrs. Harrington." Vanessa's smirk widened. "Don't take it personally, Ellie. Maybe Monaco will do you some good. Sun, cocktails, perhaps a little clarity." Her words felt like poison. That night, when I returned to what used to be our home, I found the locks changed. She had already moved in. Within a week, she fired our longtime housekeeper, our gardener, even Charles's personal assistant, the people who'd been like family to us. She replaced the photos on the walls. Ours, our wedding pictures, the trips we took, the silly moments, all gone. In their place hung glossy photos of Vanessa at charity galas and corporate events. I watched from the gates one afternoon as she gave a TV interview on the steps of my home, wearing my husband's favourite suit jacket, the one she said looked too masculine on me. I felt small, powerless, humiliated. That night I sat alone in the small apartment I'd rented on the edge of town, replaying the last words Charles said before he died. "If anything ever happens, Ellie, trust the journey, not the moment." At the time, I thought he was comforting me. But now those words felt like a riddle. And I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something, that all of this, wasn't random. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived. An airline ticket, business class, destination, Monaco, no return date. I stared at it for hours, torn between confusion and fury. Was this some cruel joke? But deep down, something told me to go. I didn't know it then, but that flight would change everything. The flight to Monaco felt like an out-of-body experience. The world below looked so small, so meaningless. Somewhere 30,000 feet beneath me, Vanessa was probably celebrating, sitting at my dining table, sipping vintage wine from my husband's cellar, believing she had won. But she hadn't read the last chapter of Charles's life. When I landed, a man in a grey suit was waiting for me at the arrivals gate. "Mrs. Harrington?" he asked. His accent was faintly European. "My name is Lucien Moreau. I'm your husband's attorney." I froze. "My husband's—" "What?" Please, follow me. He led me to a black Mercedes parked outside. No explanations, no small talk, just the hum of the engine and the pounding of my heart. We drove along the coastline, the Mediterranean glittering under the sun, waves crashing against jagged rocks. It should have been beautiful, but all I could feel was dread. Lucienne eventually stopped in front of a discreet glass building overlooking the sea. Inside, the air smelled faintly of salt and ink. He guided me to a private office, then placed a sealed envelope and a sleek metal card on the table. "This," he said softly, "was left in my care by your husband." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside, Charles's handwriting. I knew every curve of those letters. "My dearest Ellie, if you are reading this, it means my suspicions were correct. Vanessa has done what I feared she would. You are safe now. Go to the private bank listed on the card. Everything you need is already in your name, and when the time comes, you'll know what to do. See." I stared at the note until the words blurred. Lucien placed a folder beside it. Inside were documents, offshore accounts, company transfers, encrypted communications. Charles had been building a safety net behind everyone's backs. He had quietly moved nearly $1.4 billion, 10 times the public valuation of the company, into private trusts under my name. My breath caught. Why? Why would he do all this in secret? Lucien's gaze was heavy. Because he discovered your sister-in-law's plan. She intended to have you declared mentally incompetent and take over the company. He uncovered the documentation 2 months before his death. The room spun. My chest tightened as I remembered the late-night arguments between Charles and Vanessa. The closed doors. The tension. He had told me not to worry. That everything was fine. He had been protecting me. I covered my mouth as the first tear slipped down. He knew he was dying. Lucien nodded slowly. And he wanted you free from her reach. In that moment, something inside me shifted. Grief began to harden into resolve. Vanessa thought she had buried me. But she'd only buried the wrong woman. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of waves crashing below my hotel balcony. Monaco was bathed in golden light, the kind that made the world seem too beautiful for something so sinister to exist. But I wasn't there for the view. I sat at the marble desk in my suite. Charles's letter spread before me. Every time I read it, I saw his face. Calm, knowing, maybe even a little defiant. He had left me a path, and I was finally ready to walk it. Lucien returned later that day. "You're ready to see the rest?" he asked. He led me to a private office at Banque de la Côte, a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the harbour. Inside, a biometric scanner confirmed my identity with the access card Charles had left. Then, a screen flickered to life. Numbers, transfers, asset portfolios. It was like stepping into a digital kingdom built in my name. "Your husband was meticulous," Lucien said. "He made sure not a single trace connected back to his sister. He knew she would strike the moment he fell." "How long had he been planning this?" I asked quietly. Lucien gave a faint smile. 2 years. Since she first tried to have his shares diluted through a secret board vote. He suspected it wasn't just ambition. It was greed and revenge for not being made COO. Vanessa had always wanted to be more than Charles's sister. She wanted to be Charles. I clenched my fists. She took everything from me. But I'm going to take back what's mine, and what was his. Lucien leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Then you'll need evidence, fortunately." Charles anticipated that too. He slid over a flash drive. "Encrypted. Password is the date you met him." My heart stuttered. July 12th, 1999. When I unlocked it, I found dozens of files, internal memos, recorded calls, even surveillance footage. Vanessa's voice, cold and venomous, filled the room. "Once Charles is out, we can frame her for emotional instability. The board will believe it. She's been reclusive for years. Once the will's in my hands, she won't have the means to contest it. By the time she realizes what happened, everything will be gone. Each word made my pulse quicken. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was calm. Deadly calm. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. Over the next few days, I immersed myself in every detail. I reviewed the company's corporate structure, traced the shell corporations Vanessa had created, and examined Charles's notes. His handwriting carried whispers of guidance. When she moves too fast, she reveals herself. And she was moving very fast. From news reports, I learned Vanessa was consolidating control. She had appointed herself CEO, fired 2 board members loyal to Charles, and was planning a press conference to honour her late brother's legacy. I nearly laughed. It wasn't a tribute. It was a coronation. But she had no idea that the ground beneath her empire was already crumbling. Lucien and I began working in secret. We hired private investigators, forensic accountants, even a cybersecurity expert to analyse the communications between Vanessa and her consultants. Within 2 weeks, we discovered more than we hoped for. She had bribed 2 board members to fast-track the false will. She had transferred company funds into her personal accounts. She had falsified her brother's digital signature on internal filings. Each discovery felt like another brick in the wall of her downfall. But revenge needed more than data. It needed timing. Charles's letter had one final line I hadn't yet understood. "Justice, Ellie, must be patient. The truth stings more when it's witnessed." So I waited. I watched Vanessa through the news and social media, her every move documented, her smug grin splashed across magazines. She was becoming a celebrity CEO. Every interview she gave, every lie she told about carrying forward her brother's dream, made the anticipation more intoxicating. And then, finally, I saw my moment. Vanessa had scheduled her biggest event yet, a televised conference announcing the company's new merger with a major European tech conglomerate. Billions were at stake. Lucien turned to me the night before. "If we strike now, everything collapses at once. Her reputation, her finances, her control." I nodded slowly. "Then let's make tomorrow her reckoning." That night I couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled across my bed as I thought of Charles. He had known she would destroy me publicly. And now, from beyond the grave, he had given me the tools to destroy her the same way. I whispered to the dark, "You didn't just save me, Charles. You gave me a way to finish what you started." I imagined Vanessa's expression when she saw me, the woman she thought she'd erased, standing before her, armed with the truth, and for the first time since his death. I smiled. The next morning I flew back to London under an alias. Lucien arranged for the legal documents to be filed at dawn. Petitions to unseal the real will, freezing Vanessa's shares pending investigation. But that was just the start. We sent anonymous copies of the evidence to major financial journalists, hinting at corporate fraud within a top-tier firm. And as Vanessa stepped onto that stage, cameras flashing, I stepped quietly into the back of the auditorium, unnoticed, cloaked in a tailored black suit. Her voice echoed through the hall. "Today marks the beginning of a new era for Harrington Dynamics." She didn't get to finish. One by one, reporters' phones began buzzing. Then murmurs spread across the audience. Screens lit up with breaking news alerts. CEO Vanessa Harrington under investigation for corporate fraud. Anonymous leak reveals falsified documents tied to tech magnate's death. Her face drained of colour. "What is this?" she snapped, scanning the crowd. Then her eyes found me. I didn't need to speak. The look on my face said everything. I know. And it's over. For a few heartbeats, the world froze. Cameras kept rolling, journalists whispered, and Vanessa just stood there, a deer caught in the blinding light of her own greed. Her speech notes trembled in her manicured hands. "This is absurd!" she snapped, forcing a brittle laugh. These are false rumours, an attempt to tarnish our company's reputation. But the audience wasn't listening anymore. The headlines flashing across their screens told a different story. Bank accounts in offshore havens, falsified company filings, bribes traced to board members. Each one was stamped with a date and her signature. Vanessa's perfect world was cracking in real time, and I was standing in the back row, watching the cracks spread, slowly, beautifully. I stepped forward. My heels echoed down the aisle like a slow drumbeat. Every camera turned. Every voice fell silent. Vanessa's face went pale. Eleanor. She hadn't said my name in months. I stopped halfway to the stage. You look surprised, I said softly. You shouldn't be. You were expecting ghosts, weren't you? A murmur rippled through the room. The head of the European tech conglomerate, the man she was supposed to sign the merger with, turned toward her. What's happening here, Vanessa? She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. Allow me. I walked to the podium, placed a small flash drive on it, and looked straight into the cameras. This, I said, contains the final statement from my husband, Charles Harrington, the real founder of Harrington Dynamics. Gasps filled the air. A reporter called out, You mean there's another will? I smiled faintly. There's more than that. There's the truth. I turned to the audience, my voice steady. Before he died, Charles uncovered a conspiracy, one orchestrated by his own sister, to strip me of everything and take over his company. He documented everything before his death. He transferred his real assets into offshore trusts for safekeeping. And he left me, not a vacation, but a mission. I nodded to Lucien, who appeared near the front row with a briefcase. He connected his laptop to the main display, and suddenly Charles's recorded message filled the screen. He looked alive again, strong, calm, wise. The audience went silent. If this message is being played, he began, then the person you trusted most has betrayed you all. My sister Vanessa sought to control this company, not to grow it, but to destroy the values it was built upon. She manipulated legal documents, bribed officials, and tried to declare my wife unstable. I couldn't stop her while I lived, but I could make sure she never succeeded after I was gone. Vanessa stumbled backward. No, that's... Charles's image continued, cutting her words like a blade. Eleanor, my love, you were always the heart of this company. This is yours now. My final will leaves everything. My shares, my assets, my name. To you. The room erupted. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Vanessa screamed over the noise. He was sick. He didn't know what he was saying. But Lucien raised his voice. All legal documents have been verified by 3 independent firms. His signature, his filings, his video, all authentic. The fraudulent will you presented has already been nullified. Vanessa froze. Her mask slipped, and I saw what she truly was. Desperate, exposed, undone. Within hours, the company's board convened an emergency meeting. Her shares were frozen, her access revoked, her reputation torn apart by the same media she had once courted. By evening, every news outlet in Europe was covering the story. Tech empire heiress exposed in corporate fraud scandal. Widow of Charles Harrington reclaims company amid explosive evidence. I watched it all unfold from my hotel room. My phone buzzed non-stop. Reporters, investors, old friends. But I ignored them. I was sitting by the window watching the city lights shimmer below, feeling nothing but quiet relief. For 20 years I had been the supportive wife, the silent partner. Vanessa had mistaken my silence for weakness. Now, the world finally knew what silence can do when it's ready to speak. Vanessa tried to fight back, of course. She filed appeals, blamed others, cried on live TV. But the evidence was airtight. Her accounts were frozen. The bribes she paid surfaced in public records, and the board she once controlled voted unanimously to remove her. By the time the court finalized the rulings, she had lost everything. The company, the mansion, the family name. And in a final twist of irony, The estate she once stole was seized to repay damages and transferred to me. The same keys she had taken from me months ago now lay in my palm again. I didn't move back in. I sold the mansion, donated part of the proceeds to the foundation Charles had started, for women in tech, for people who'd been overlooked, underestimated, silenced. Because that's what Vanessa had done to me, and what too many people in power do to those who don't fight back. I returned to Monaco a few months later, not as the broken widow she thought she'd buried, but as the rightful heir to the empire she tried to steal. I bought a modest villa overlooking the sea, the same one Charles and I had once dreamed of retiring to. Every evening I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine, the Mediterranean glowing beneath the sunset. Lucien once asked me, "Do you feel vindicated?" I thought for a moment before answering. No, I feel free. Because revenge isn't about getting even, it's about reclaiming your voice, the one they tried to erase. And though Charles was gone, I could almost feel him there beside me. The salt on the wind, the warmth of the fading sun, all of it whispering the same thing. You made it, Ellie. A year later, I relaunched the company, under a new name, Eleanor Innovations, inspired by the city where Charles proposed to me. This time it wasn't built on greed or deceit, but on transparency and integrity. Every board meeting began with one rule, engraved on a plaque by the door. Power built on betrayal will always crumble, but truth endures. One morning, as I sorted through old boxes, I found a final envelope in Charles's handwriting. I hadn't noticed it before. It read simply, "For when you've won." Inside was a photograph, the two of us on our wedding day, laughing, carefree, and on the back he had written, "You were always stronger than you knew." I just made sure the world saw it. I pressed the photo to my heart and let the tears finally come. Not of sorrow, but of peace. Charles had planned his revenge not to destroy, but to protect. He'd given me everything, freedom, justice, and a chance to live again, and that's exactly what I intended to do. In the end, Vanessa didn't just lose her wealth, she lost the illusion of control. And I, the wife everyone pitied, became the keeper of the truth. It wasn't about money or power, it was about honor, about standing back up after being publicly crushed and saying, "I'm still here." Some people build empires on ambition, others on love. Only one survives when the storm hits. Charles knew that. Now so do I. If you've ever been betrayed, underestimated, or erased, remember Eleanor's story. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't rage, it's resilience. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe karma always comes, even if it has to be written in a will. Because justice, my friends, has perfect timing.